Department of School Education, Punjab. How much land does a man need? By Leo Tolstoy. Part 3. Class 10th. Subject English. Brief summary of Part 1 and 2. A classic short story written by Leo Tolstoy deals with need versus greed. In this story, the same happens to Pakhom, a hard-working farmer who has a small piece of land. His greed for more and more land takes away his happiness. He is happily married and satisfied with his simple way of life. One day, they are visited by his wife's sister from a city, and the two sisters discuss about the pros and cons of village and city life. His wife defends the simple life of village away from the materialistic life of the city. Pakhom agrees with his wife's views, but he still expresses a desire to have more land. His words fall on the ears of the devil, and the devil accepts his challenge. A few days later, Pakhom came to know about an available piece of land, and he buys it. Since it is a collective farmland, there are other farmers who cultivate on the surrounding piece of land. But there is continuous quarrels due to animals straying onto his piece of land. Even his appeals to the village head fell on deaf ears, and he had to move out from that place. In the new place, Pakhom buys large piece of land and ends up having huge profits. However, this only increases his greed for more land. He arranges money to buy a huge piece of land from a poor farmer who has fallen into bad times. However, in the middle of the deal, he is interrupted by a stranger who tells him about the land of the Bashkirs. Hearing about the tribesmen, he cannot resist the temptation and sets off immediately to inquire. Once in the land of the Bashkirs, he befriends the people and the chief and earns their trust. He presents them with lots of gifts. The chief asks him to choose his piece of land for a fixed sum of money. The condition was that he has to mark the land as far and wide as he wants, as long as he returns to the starting point before sunset. Students, before starting part 6 of the lesson, let's learn some word meanings. Harness. Harness. A set of fittings by which a horse or other animals is tied to a cart and controlled by its driver. Steppe. Steppe. A large area of flat, unforested grassland in southeastern Europe or Siberia. Assemble. Assemble. Gather together in one place for a common purpose. Ascent. Ascent. Go up or climb. Hillock. Hillock. A small hill. Dismount. Dismount. Get off a horse or anything that one is riding. Stretch. Stretch. To extend one's body or a part of body to its full length in order to reach for something. Glisten. Glisten. Shine with a sparkling light. Unfasten. Unfasten. Become loose. Girdle. Girdle. A belt or cord worn round the waist. Flask. Flask. A container for liquids. Spade. Spade. A tool with a sharp-edged, rectangular metal blade and a long handle used for digging. tempting, tempting, appealing to, yard, yard, a unit of measurement equal to 3 feet, visible, visible, able to be seen, pity, pity, feeling of sorrow by the sufferings of others, scarcely, scarcely, only just. Students, let's begin part 6. Pakhom lay on the feather bed, but could not sleep. He kept thinking about the land. What a large track I'll mark off, thought he. I can easily do 35 miles in a day. So he was so excited that he couldn't sleep the whole night. He was really confident that he can easily purchase a large tract of land for only 1,000 rubles. In the morning, he got up, roused his man, who was sleeping in his cart, bade him harness, and went to call the bashkirs. So early in the morning, Pakhom, along with his servant, went to call the bashkirs. It's time to go to the steppe to measure the land, he said. As I've told you, what is a steppe? A large unforested grassland. The bashkirs rose and assembled, and the chief came too. They ascended a hillock called by the bashkirs a shikhan, and dismounting from their carts and their horses, gathered in one spot. The chief came up to Pakhom and stretching out his arm towards the plain. So the bashkirs assembled at a hillock, which they call it as shikhan. And then the chief came up to Pakhom and said, "See," said he, "all this as far as your eye can catch is ours. You may have any part of it you like." So the chief offers Pakhom any stretch of land that he liked just by paying 1,000 rubles. Pakhom's eyes glistened. It was all virgin soil. The chief took off his fox fur cap, placed it on the ground, and said, "This will be the mark. Start from here and return here again. All the land you go round shall be yours." Pakhom was very happy to see the fertile land. The chief took off his fox fur cap and he placed it on the ground as a mark. Then he told Pakhom that he had to start from here and return to the same place before sunset, and then the land will all be his. Pakhom took out his money and put it on the cap. Then he took off his outer coat, remaining in his sleeveless undercoat. He unfastened his girdle and tied it tight below his stomach, put a little bag of bread into the breast of his coat, and tying a flask of water to his girdle, he drew up the tops of his boots, took the spade from his man, and stood ready to start. He considered for some moments which way he had better go. It was tempting everywhere. "No matter," he concluded, "I will go towards the rising sun." So Pakhom took out the 1,000 rubles and put it on the cap. Then he carried a little bag of bread and a flask of water, which was tied to his girdle. So what is a girdle? Yes, we have discussed it earlier. A girdle is a belt worn round the waist. And he was in a dilemma which way to go, because it was fertile everywhere. Then he decided that he will start his journey towards the east. Pakhom started walking neither slowly nor quickly. After having gone 1,000 yards, he stopped, dug a hole, and placed pieces of turf one on another to make it more visible. Then he went on, and now that he had walked off his stiffness, he quickened his pace. After a while, he dug another hole. So initially, Pakhom started slowly, but after covering about 1,000 yards, he quickened his pace. So as a mark, he put pieces of turf at regular intervals. I will go on for another 3 miles, thought he, and then turned to the left. This spot is so fine that it would be a pity to lose it. The further one goes, the better the land seems. So here, I think the greed got better of him, and he was in a dilemma whether to turn towards left or go for another 3 miles. He went straight on for a while, and when he looked round, the hillock was scarcely visible, and the people on it looked like black ants, and he would just see something glistening there in the sun. So he had gone quite far off, and people looked like black ants when he looked around. Thought Pakhom, I have gone far enough in this direction. It is time to turn. Besides, I am in a regular sweat and very thirsty. So after covering such a long distance, Pakhom became really tired and was feeling thirsty. He stopped, dug a large hole, and heaped up pieces of turf. Next, he untied his flask, had a drink, and then turned sharply to the left. He went on and on. The grass was high, and it was very hot. So now he thought to turn left, and he dug a hole and he put pieces of turf there as a mark point. Then he turned towards left and he started to walk. There it was really getting very hot, and the sun was also beating very harshly. Pakhom began to grow tired. He looked at the sun and saw that it was noon. Well, he thought, I must have a rest. So, as he was growing very tired, and as it was noon, it was really difficult for him to continue further. And then he thought of taking some rest. It had become terribly hot, and he felt sleepy. Still, he went on and on, thinking, an hour to suffer, a lifetime to live. So, though it was really hot and he was really getting very tired, but he was not thinking about the present at that time. He was thinking about the future. So, he was thinking that a few hours of difficulty and hardship will bore rich fruits, and he will have lots of happiness and peace in the future. Later in the afternoon, Pakhom thought of turning back. So he hurriedly dug a hole and turned straight towards the hillock. So it was late in the afternoon, and Pakhom knew that the sun was also going to set in a few hours. So he hurriedly dug a hole and he turned straight towards the hillock. Students, we have completed part 6 of the lesson. Here are some short questions. 1. How much land did Pakhom think he can cover in one day? 2. What do the Bashkirs call a hillock? 3. What did the chief of the Bashkirs keep on the ground as a mark? 4. How much money did Pakhom keep on the cap? 5. What did he tie to his girdle? 6. From which direction did he start? 7. In which direction did he turn after covering a long distance? 8. How was the weather? 9. When did he think of taking some rest? 10. What did he say to himself after deciding not to take any rest? Let's read the answers. 1. Pakhom thought that he could cover 35 miles in a day. 2. The Bashkis called the hillock as C10. 3. The chief of the Bashkirs kept his fox fur cap as a mark. 4. Pakhom kept 1,000 rubles on the cap. 5. He tied a flask of water to his girdle. 6. He started towards the rising sun. 7. Pakhom turned towards the left. 8. The weather was very hot. 9. He thought of taking some rest at noon. 10. He told to himself, an hour to suffer, a lifetime to live. Students, let's begin part 7. But before that, let's read some difficult words. Bruised. An injury appearing as an area of discolored skin on the body, sinking to go below the surface of something. Rim, the upper or outer edge of an object. Grasp, to hold something firmly. Ruin, being destroyed. Parch, become dry through intense heat. Bellows, a tool used to blow air, especially into a fire, to make it burn better. Strain, to force body to make unusually great effort. Pity, feeling of sorrow caused by the sufferings of others. Grave, a hole dug in the ground to receive a coffin or dead body, typically marked by a stone. Now let's read the text. Pakhom went straight towards the hillock, but he now walked with difficulty. He was done up with the heat. His bare feet were cut and bruised, and his legs began to fail. He longed to rest, but it was impossible if he meant to get back before sunset. The sun waits for no man, and it was sinking lower and lower. He looked towards the hillock and at the sun. He was still far from his goal, and the sun was already near the rim. So Pakhom was exhausted because of the heat. His bare feet were cut and bruised, and it was difficult for him to walk. But he had no other option. He had to return towards his goal, and the sun was fast setting. Pakhom walked on and on. It was very hard walking, but he went quicker and quicker. He pressed on, but was still far from the place. He began running, threw away his coat, his boots, his flask and his cap, and kept only the spade which he used as a support. Now here he began to become nervous. He knew that it was a difficult journey back. So he threw his coat, his boots, his flask and everything in order to reach to his destination. What shall I do, he thought again. I have grasped too much and ruined the whole affair. I can't get there before the sun sets. Now he begins to think that it is very difficult for him to reach to his destination before the sun sets. And this fear made him still more breathless. Pakhom went on running, his soaking shirt and trousers stuck to him, and his mouth was parched. His breast was working like a blacksmith's bellows. His heart was beating like hammer, and his legs were giving way as if they did not belong to him. Pakhom was seized with terror, lest he should die of the strain. Though afraid of death, he could not stop. He gathered his last strength and ran on. So he knew that something was wrong. He was also afraid that he might even die because of excess strain and exhaustion, but he had no other option. He tried whatever he could to reach his goal. The sun was quite low, but he was also quite near his aim. Pakhom could already see the people on the hillock waving their arms to hurry him up. Seeing the excitement of the people, Pakhom was certain that he could definitely make to the starting point. Pakhom looked at the sun, which had reached the earth. One side of it had already disappeared. With all his remaining strength, he rushed on, bending his body forward so that his legs could hardly follow fast enough to keep him from falling. He took a long breath and ran up the hillock. It was still light there. He reached the top and saw the cap. Before it sat the chief, laughing and holding his sides. Again Pakhom uttered a cry. His legs gave way beneath him. He fell forward and reached the cap with his hands. This paragraph shows that Pakhom used every ounce of his energy to reach his destination. Ah, that's a fine fellow, exclaimed the chief. He has gained much land. At this point, even the chief thought that Pakhom had made it before sunset. Pakhom's servant came running up and tried to raise him, but he saw that blood was flowing from his mouth. Pakhom was dead. The Bashkis clicked their tongues to show their pity. So, Pakhom had died as soon as he reached the destination. So the euphoria had turned into sea of grief. There was pin-drop silence all around. His servant picked up the spade and dug a grave long enough for Pakhom to lie in and buried him in it. 6 feet from his head to his heels was all he needed. So Pakhom, who dreamt of having thousands of acres of land, required only 6 feet to lie in his grave. So students, we have come to the end of the lesson. Now let's read some short questions based on part 7. 1. Why was Pakhom moving with difficulty? 2. Why did he start running? 3. Why did the Bashkis wave their arms? 4. What did Pakhom's servant see when he tried to raise him? 5. How much land was needed to bury him? Now, let's read the answers. 1. Pakhom was moving with difficulty because he was very tired due to the heat. 2. He started running because he was still far from his goal. 3. The Bashkis waved their arms to hurry him up to reach his goal. 4. Pakhom's servant saw that blood was flowing from his mouth. 5. 6 feet of land was needed to bury him. Students, you have already done question number 1 to 9 in part 1 and 2. Let's read question number 10 to 13. 10. Bashkis wanted to repay Pakhom for his gifts. What did Pakhom want from them? 11. Our price is always the same, 1000 rubles a day. The chief said. What did he mean? 12. On what condition did the chief agree to sell land to Pakhom? 13. What is the moral of the story? Answer to textual question 10 and 11. 10. Pakhom wanted land from the Bashkirs. 11. The chief meant that a person can get as much land as he can go round on his feet in a day for 1000 rubles. Answer to question number 12. The condition was that if Pakhom did not return on the same day to the spot where he started, he would lose all the money. 13. The moral of the story is that excessive desire for anything can make a person lose everything that he has. Excessive desire for land proved fatal for Pakhom, and he had to pay a heavy price for it by losing his life. Students, we have come to the end of this lesson. So, what did you learn from this Leo Tolstoy's masterpiece? The most important thing that we have learned from this lesson is that it is ourselves that have the capability to control the desires within us. Without desire, we cannot move ahead in our lives. So it is important to have desires, but that should be within our limit. Uncontrollable desires could be counterproductive. It could even prove fatal, as was the case with Pakhom. So have dreams in life and achieve those dreams without being too greedy. Students, I hope that all of you have understood all the three parts of this story written by one of the greatest writers, Mr. Leo Tolstoy. Thank you. Prepared by DM and BMs of Team Mohali. DM Shri Surjit Kumar Sharma, BM Shri Rajneesh Sharma, and BM Shri Vivek Shonik.